That's kind of guided my whole journey. Over the years I've been in this ecosystem, I've seen my salary triple. Practically every single role that I've had has come because of the connections that I've made and the people I know.
Welcome to Salesforce Radio, your destination for insights, news, and community connections within the dynamic Salesforce ecosystem.
Very excited to have Eric Dreshfield here today on Salesforce Radio. Salesforce MVP Hall of Famer, founder of Midwest Dreamin, also dreaming in data, and a lot more, which I'm excited to hear about. Eric, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Ben, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, this is a pleasure. And I always like these kind of situations where I'm told, hey, speak with Eric, get him on the podcast. No, you don't need to even, meet with him before. He's going to be a great guest. And of course, I've been seeing you on LinkedIn now for a number of years, seeing some of the initiatives that you've been involved with in the ecosystem. So I'm excited to get to know each other, hear a little bit about your story, how you got to where you are today, and things that you can share with the other people listening and with other people who are either just getting into Salesforce or have been in the ecosystem for a long time.
Sounds great.
So I guess just to start out, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe a little bit about what you're doing today, and then maybe we can get into a little bit of your background and your story.
Yeah, totally. So probably the biggest things I'm doing today is running 2 Salesforce community conferences and helping with a third, actually. So Midwest Dreamin is an event that I founded back in 2011, based solely on the premise that I could not go to Dreamforce our first year in the ecosystem. My boss at the company I was working at back then was like, I'd love to send you, but we don't have the budget. She says, you can use company time to go, but you'll have to pay hotel and cost of the ticket and airfare and stuff on your own. And even, what is that, 13 years ago,
oh, wow.
In San Francisco was still pretty pricey. I mean, not by today's standards, but back then it felt pretty pricey to me. So I couldn't go, but my mind just said to me, well, if I can't go to Dreamforce, let's bring it to me. That was it. That's what started Midwest Dreamin way back then. We created this conference around it. 2011 had 100 people show up at a hotel in Louisville, Kentucky for a full day of Salesforce stuff. Was slightly organized, very much chaotic. Had no keynote speakers, just had a handful of breakout sessions and a handful of sponsors. And that was the very beginnings of Midwest Dreamin. Since then, it's blossomed quite a bit. Spent 6 years in Chicago, followed by going into our 3rd year now in Minneapolis. It's about 3 weeks from now. Yikes. And
You've
it's
got
grown. yeah. There's always time for last minute things. Yeah. It's grown from that 100 people to close to 1,000 now over the years. So that's pretty sweet. A few years ago, a friend of mine who had attended a couple times said, this is going to be the year you break 1,000. And he kept telling me, I kept saying that over and over and over again. He says, you brought it to Minneapolis. We got a huge community here. This is the year you top 1,000. And I know my mind was sitting there thinking, 1,000 people, that would be really cool at an event that I've organized, but it would also be really scary. It just like the volume of change from 100 to 1,000. It hit me pretty hard back then when it just felt like it was going to be something ridiculously huge. Fortunately, I've had a really great team working with me to help me run Midwest Dreamin for many years. Most of the teams have been with me now at least 2 years, some of them several years longer than that. And so it's a pretty well-oiled machine, seems to do everything really well. Everybody knows their functions and everything just happens. And if there's something that goes wrong, most of the time the attendees don't realize it, which is perfect. The other event, the second event that I launched, actually started working on that a little over a year ago now. It's called Dreamin' in Data. That came about from a conversation with a client of mine around the possibility of running a customer conference for them. So their version of Dreamforce, their ISV partner, they were talking to me about potentially doing customer conference for their clients, but they wanted it kind of wrapped around a community conference so that the general public, the rest of the Salesforce community could get involved, learn more about their company, their product, and then have them the third day of the event kind of be the very specific, let's make it for our customers only. Things changed with the company, shifted around, so they decided to back off on that and maybe do it next year, in which point I thought, well, I've already done all this work for this conference thing. it really could be more generic than just that specific company. So I threw together Dreamin' in Data, did a bunch of prep work and legwork, found a hotel, signed a contract, and then started trying to find people to help me organize that event and run it, and managed to find a really great group of people that cross over the Salesforce community, the Tableau community, and the MuleSoft community. In general, got the equivalent of MVPs from all three of those communities helping me run this event. And we're super excited about it. It's starting to gain some momentum. That's in November in St. Louis this year. Really looking forward to that. We've already changed that from a 1.5 day conference to a 2 day conference, just based on the initial reactions we're getting around that. So we're really pumped and probably expecting 450 people for that event as a first year event, which is pretty big. So super excited about that. And then the third event that I mentioned, sort of, that I'm helping with, it's not one that I started, but I've been involved with it since the beginning. Is Life Sciences Dreamin'. This will be year 2 for that event. So last year it was in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. This year it's in Philadelphia. That's in mid-November, like the 9th through the 11th, if my memory is correct. I'm excited for that one. It's basically a Dreamin' conference like Midwest, but very focused on the HLS, life science industries, covering all sorts of great topics within that industry. Lots of cool speakers lined up already, some interesting partners coming on board to bring some of their own unique flair to that event as well. And that one should be fun and exciting too. Probably be 250, 300 people at that event this year.
That sounds amazing. I'm honestly having a hard time keeping my eyes on the screen and talking to you, and I'm about to go look at my calendar. Is the truth? I'm thinking, okay, I'm ready to maybe jump around a little bit more. I'm starting to. I want to look at the events calendar for the company and see who's going what, and try to get my requests in as soon as possible. Yeah. But cool. This is really interesting, and I'm interested in kind of the backstory. I want to get into maybe a little bit later in the conversation what's drawn you to events since, doing your first one, whether it's, kind of the excitement around an event or what people are getting out of it, or just, the buzz around it. I'd love to back up a little bit and understand the story here, because it sounds like you started with Salesforce. When was that? Yeah.
So my first introduction to Salesforce was in 2009. So it's coming up close to the 15-year anniversary. I think it's about 2 months away. I feel like it was late August or early September the first time I hit the login and created an ID and got in there. My initial journey into Salesforce, I was working a temporary job as a call center agent for a software company. This was pre-Salesforce. I'd kind of been in a 2.5 to 3 year slump of not having what I called a real job. Lost a really great job in the end of 2005 and had a really hard time finding some work since then. I found this call center job that was a temp position. Remember this like it was yesterday, when it was that many years ago. It's kind of funny. I saw an ad in the newspaper on a Sunday, emailed in a resume Sunday afternoon, got a phone call Monday morning asking me if I could be at this company's office Tuesday morning, the next day, for an interview and some skills testing. And if they liked me, they wanted me to start immediately. If the hiring manager liked me and my scores were good enough, they were like, can you start right away? And at that point in time, my primary job, the one that I was working 30, 40 hours a week on and making slightly above minimum wage and using most of my income to buy insurance for the family, was unloading trucks at a Kohl's department store. So it was a kind of a third shift job. We'd go in at 7 or 8 o'clock at night. We'd stay till the freight's unloaded and put up on the shelves in the store. So I go into this interview that morning and do some testing, and everything's cool. In my opinion, it seemed good. I didn't find anything super crazy challenging about the testing or the questions they asked me. And a few minutes after finishing the exam and getting done with the interview portion, their HR person came back in the room and said, so the hiring manager really likes you, and we've never had anybody score 100 on that test until today. Can you stick around? Can you start right now? I'm like, sign me up. What do we do? Let's do it. So then I had 3 days of training on their CRM system, which was not Salesforce, and their phone system on their software that I was going to be supporting their clients on. And then I was live on the phones. was me and three other people who started that same day with virtually no product training, and it was literally a one-day boot camp. Here's what's going on. Here's the things you might get. They rolled out one new piece of software to their clients, and back then, that for most companies back then, that meant mailing a disk to the clients. They'd put it in the drive, follow the directions, and if things blew up, then they'd call, and we were the people they were calling, the tech support line. And it was a fun job. I enjoyed it. Learned a lot of things. In fact, the call volume was way lighter than I expected. Those four of us that started that same day, we probably spent 2 hours a day on the phone supporting clients and fixing problems and getting paid for 8 hours. That kind of felt kind of sweet right there, that I wasn't just getting paid for the time I was on the phone. But the four of us quickly became 3 and 2, and then just me. I think 6 weeks into what was originally billed as an 8-week job assignment, it was just down to me out of those 4. And I just kept coming to work, just kept doing my job, just kept learning more and more stuff. They kept putting me on more pieces of their software, training me on everything they were doing. So by the time about 2.5, 3 months was passed, I was functioning like one of the regular support agents, not just handling that one very specific piece of software, but their entire platform. And it was fun. I was having a blast. I was learning a lot. It was good pay. Still a temp job, which was okay. But I still had to keep wondering, when's it going to end? When do I need to start looking for that next gig or hoping they'll flip me over to permanent? And about 6 months into this temp job, 8 weeks long. Remember, I told the 8-week assignment. 6 months in, I get a call from the HR department, and she says, "Hey, Eric, we finally have approval to bring you on board as a full-time employee. And as a full-timer, there's more money and there's benefits. Are you interested?" And that was one of those, just twist my arm a little harder kind of moments. I've been looking for a full-time real job for years. What do we do? Let's sign me up. Let's make it happen. And she's like, "Slow down, Eric. There's a job interview process." Okay. An interview for the job I already have.
Right.
No big deal. I got it once. I've proven myself. I'm not worried about a job interview for a job I'm already performing. Not a big deal. Who do I need to talk to? So a couple of days later, I get on a phone call with their vice president. He's over the call center and everything technology related at this company. From job title, it's probably too long to fit on a business card. He had so much responsibility. She was in their San Diego corporate office, and I was in Evansville, Indiana, where I live, where they had opened a call center a few years earlier. And so it was literally a phone call. I think this was pre-Zoom and pre-Google Meet and all that kind of stuff. So it was the hand set up to your mouth and or leaning on your shoulder and talking for an hour, one of those kind of phone calls. And she comes right off the bat and says something along the lines of, "So Eric, I know why you're still here after all this time. You do a great job satisfying your customers' problems, getting them back in business. You do it quickly, and everybody talks about how pleasant you are to work with, and the clients are super happy with the work you're doing." She says, so thanks for all that. And she says, "I've reviewed your resume and looked at some of the things you've accomplished at some of your previous employers." And she says, I'm really impressed with your background and your skills and the variety of industries that you've touched. And then she says to me, "So I really just have one question I want to ask you." At which point my heart pops up into my throat and the beads of sweat start showing up on my forehead. My stomach's churning, and it's like a 1-question job interview. What the heck is she going to ask me? It's like I had no clue what to expect from that split second on. And she says to me, "Why are we wasting your time and ours having you support our clients when there's so many other things you can do to help move this company forward?" I thought about that for a second or two and thought, wow, that's an amazing question. That's awesome. I really wish I had an amazing answer I could give her. And the only thing that I had for her was, well, the call center agent position is all you have open right now. So that's why I'm here. And that's basically what I said. And her response was almost like she wanted me to respond that way. Her response back to me was, "Well, that's true, but give me 3 weeks. I'm working on a business analyst position to help us launch Salesforce to the call center you're working in. I think you'd be perfect in that job."
Wow.
To which I replied, "What's Salesforce? I've never heard of it."
Of course.
And that was my introduction to Salesforce. And literally, that was it. They flipped me to permanent, made me a business analyst, and it was off to the races. Learning Salesforce and launching Service Cloud all at the same time in this call center that I was working in. Pretty cool, pretty fun, lots of challenges. pretty amazing experience if I go back and think about it. And I still enjoy visiting with that VP every year at Dreamforce when I run into her. Yeah, so it's cool. It's been a wild ride and very enjoyable since then.
So it sounds like that VP is still using Salesforce still.
Yep. So she's still at the same organization. They've gone whole. They've gone totally in the cloud. Everything they do is cloud based now, not just their CRM and everything from billing and invoicing and whatever. We're all in on Salesforce and CRM and cloud based everything. And she's still managing the whole thing. And there's still a couple other people that I used to work with back there that are still there working with her. And it was a fun place for me for a few years, and got me started in this wild ecosystem.
I love that. I mean, every story I hear, is so unique, and there's so many people who have come into the ecosystem in a similar way, maybe not from a traditional tech background, not looking for a software job, not looking to be a data analyst, but being someone who could potentially either be a user in Salesforce or is a user in Salesforce, and then ends up being the person who helps implement the system. And I guess if they're still using it, it means that the first implementation went pretty well.
Yep, I would assume that's the case. Yeah, I know they've expanded their use quite a bit over the years to include many other departments. So
if they're still using Salesforce, it means they've definitely expanded over the years. I mean, 15 years later, that's really incredible. So what did you do? What were the resources that you used for that initial implementation? What did it look like to be the point person for Salesforce in this organization?
Yeah, so that was the interesting part of the journey, I think, more than anything else. The Trailhead did not exist back then. That came around in, I think, 2014 or so. So the resources were really the official Salesforce training from Salesforce trainers out in San Francisco, or help and training online, or Google, or local community groups if there was one close to you. Back then, there were very few community groups around the country. But that was where my boss pointed me. Probably within the first week or so of being on the job, he told me, go find a local user group and meet people already using Salesforce and learn from them. Well, I was in the middle of nowhere in Evansville, Indiana. I mean, it's 2.5 to 3 hours from any major city, and there wasn't a group locally. There weren't very many groups, like I said, in the whole country back that far. So the first user group meeting I went to was in Chicago. It was a 6-hour drive. I should back up a quick step here. My boss told me, go find the user groups to learn from people that are already using Salesforce, because I can't send you to the training. We don't have the budget. We had a Salesforce administrator on staff. We had some developers. Those were the people they were sending to the official Salesforce training. And me coming in a little later to the game than those people as the BA. It's like, sorry, we can't do it. We don't have the money. But find some people already using Salesforce and learn what you can. So I started looking around for user groups in my area and stumbled across one in Chicago that was holding a meeting in the morning one day. And that afternoon in Chicago, Salesforce was hosting an event that today they'd call a world tour. I think way back in 2009 or 10, they probably referred to it as a CloudForce event or a city tour. And so I spent an entire day in Chicago between the user group meeting and the CloudForce event, drinking from the fire hose, as they say, trying to soak in everything I could and learn as much as I can about Salesforce and the ecosystem and any of the partners that were there and how you do things and all that fun stuff. That kind of set me off on this whole community journey of my own, because my boss was very supportive of go find the user groups and learn more from people that are already in the ecosystem and already using Salesforce. So I then spent about a day and a half to 2 days a month driving to other cities in the Midwest, just going to user group meetings. Cincinnati, Columbus, Ohio, Indianapolis, Nashville, you name it, anywhere in the Midwest where there was a meeting, I was probably going to be there. If it was closer than 5 or 6 hours away. Chicago was about as far as I went at the time. And I met a whole ton of people at those meetings. And every single meeting I went to, from the moment I walked in the door and signed their attendance sheet, I felt like I belonged there. I felt like everybody there really cared about me and the challenges that I had and wanted to do nothing but help me. So before the whole Ohana movement came around, I felt like Salesforce was a family. Like everybody just genuinely cared for my success. And it was pretty amazing. I've been in the software industry before and other parts of it. Had been to some user group type meetings and other aspects of software, but none of them had that family feel that you really care about. All the others were just very business focused. What's in it for me? What can I learn? That kind of thing. And this was different. After several months, 6 to 8 months of touring the Midwest and going to different user group meetings around the area, I kind of thought to myself, this is kind of silly. I can't be the only person in Southwest Indiana. I can't be the only one here in my part of the country using Salesforce. So I found somebody at Salesforce to pose the question, hey, what's it take to have a user group started in my city? And their response was slightly shocking, but a little bit foretelling. It's probably the best way to put it. They said something along the lines of, hey, congratulations, thanks for volunteering to lead the user group. Let us help you get started.
Exactly.
And I'm shaking my head and saying, no, that's not what I meant. And I'm talking to him over the phone or over the Zoom or whatever it was way back. And it's like, I know this much, like the space between my fingers, there is no space. I know that much about Salesforce, and I need to know the whole gamut of what it's all about. So I'm the wrong person to lead a user group because I don't know anything. After 2 or 3 more conversations over the course of a couple of weeks, I launched a user group. They convinced me I was the right person for the job because I was so hungry for the knowledge. Had 5 or 6 people show up to that very first user group meeting back in 2010, and those 5 or 6 people still come to my group meetings every time I hold them this many years later, along with anywhere between 15 or 30 or 40 others, depending on the topic and the time of the day and where the meeting is held and all those kind of things. So my boss said, go find a user group, get involved in the community. Well, I didn't just go find a user group. I launched one. I got involved in the community. I got very heavily involved in the community. Learned about Dreamforce around that time and said, hey, I'd love to go. And she said, yeah, I'd love for you to go too. But we don't have the budget. So my mind says, well, let's just bring Dreamforce to me. That started Midwest Dreamin back in 2011. And ever since then, it's been like that snow roll at the top of the mountain, just rolling down the hill, getting bigger and bigger and picking up more and more speed ever since. So it's been an interesting journey, to say the least.
It's a wonderful story, and I want to go back to that feeling of camaraderie and friendship or companionship and community that you felt when you walked into that first meeting in Chicago or those meetings that came shortly after it. What do you think made those meetings and the Salesforce ecosystem different from the other places you had been in the past?
I think in reality, it was just the people. I don't know if it really had anything to do with Salesforce itself, but I think it was just the people who were at those meetings and their own attitudes and how they viewed life. The person that I met at the door at that first Chicago user group meeting, Denise Carboni, she has been with me leading Midwest Dreamin ever since 2014, my event co-chair, if you will, since that time. She and I jokingly refer to each other as our Salesforce spouses. Her husband and my wife know about that nickname, and they've met each other, and they're cool with it. And so it's been very, very much a family extension, kind of on that regard. Even I know that I think the second user group meeting I went to way back then was in Indianapolis. Met a few great people there that are still heavily involved in the community. Danielle Lassing, I think, was leading the Indianapolis user group back then. She has since moved to Florida. I think she's still involved in leading a group down in Florida somewhere. She's involved in the Florida Dreamin Community Conference as well, which is sweet. I've been to that one a couple of times. And so it's, I don't know. It's hard to put my finger on really what's the camaraderie feeling and all that stuff was what caused it. But I have to kind of figure out that it's got to be the people, because I spend a lot of time with the people. Wherever it is I'm going. I kind of jokingly told someone that about 6-7 years ago, I've stopped going to Dreamforce for the content. I go for the people. And it's people that you only see once or twice a year in the real world. And it's just good to get to reconnect and have the face-to-face conversations on there. Well, let's have a coffee together or whatever and chat and see what's going on and catch up. And it just feels like brothers and sisters to me.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And, I've only experienced it on a much smaller level. I've only been to a number of conferences and, I'm already starting to feel it as I show up kind of at these places and you get to, see some of the people and oftentimes, I'm usually representing Titan and I'm there. And oftentimes we have a booth and, it's starting to be, recently I was in the London World Tour just a couple of weeks back and, right in the morning when I got there, and I was just getting set up, a couple of people came by and, they very purposefully, and they came to see me and they came to update me on some of the things we had talked about the last time we had seen each other. And, you feel that continuity and that sense of companionship amongst the people in the space. And, it's really cool, and also in an ecosystem where so many people kind of, the accidental admin or, that type of scenario where people didn't really have full intention to get involved with the Salesforce ecosystem and then end up landing in it and then have decided, hey, this is a place that I really do, see myself using my talents and being able to continue growing professionally and just as an individual. It's interesting to see. And it's also something that I didn't totally expect. I'm not exactly an accidental admin, but I did, kind of fall into Salesforce accidentally in many ways through working, with Titan and we're just focused on Salesforce and serving the Salesforce community in any way that we can through our platform. So you mentioned earlier that these days, a lot of what you do is events. So when did that transition kind of happen? When did you go from, being someone who works in Salesforce and is logging in every day to someone who's manifesting and creating this environment for Salesforce professionals?
Yeah. So back in the career journey, the first 5 or 6 years in the Salesforce ecosystem, I worked for customers of Salesforce. It was an end user or a power user, if you will, doing and helping those two customers, implement Sales Cloud, Service Cloud. And then basically my job became reporting and analytics at those organizations. And so I was digging into building reports and dashboards every day, trying to understand the data and then making sure management could better utilize the data that they have to make smarter decisions and run the business better. At Dreamforce 2014, I believe it was, I was just wandering the exhibit hall, ran into a company, saw a demo of a product and fell in love with it. And it was literally that quick. It was like, man, this product is amazing. There's all these things I can see doing with it, all these use cases for admins, for end users, for BAs, for you name it. There was stuff that I could envision this company and this product doing. And it was like that moment when I saw that product and had that feeling about that was like, I wanted to work for this company. So I started pursuing the company, started applying for jobs there. Nothing quite felt right. Now, I had a few interviews, never got any offers, but I was very adamant about what I wanted to do and had a few conversations with the recruiter outside of the, hey, here's another job that you might want to apply for. And ultimately, after, about a year's worth of failed attempts at getting hired by that company, the recruiter said to me, it's obvious you're passionate about coming to work here. Tell me more. Why? What is it you want to do for us? And why do you think it would be a benefit for this organization? So I spilled my guts on her. I told her why I was interested in the company from day one, what I felt like I could bring to the table. And if you could figure out a way to marry all that stuff together, which was basically the product that I loved, that I'd never been a user of, but I just saw this vision for it and the community tying all that stuff together and said, if you can figure out a way to make all that happen, let's talk some more. About 3 months later, I get a phone call from the recruiter. She's like, hey, our marketing department wants to talk to you. So I think we've got a role that they're interested in bringing you on board and I'm talking to you about. So I get into some conversations with this company's marketing department. I had a couple of conversations. It was probably August, September timeframe. And then Dreamforce rolled around and I went to Dreamforce that year, spent about 3 hours in meetings with that organization at Dreamforce. I called them meetings. They called them job interviews.
I love it.
It was with their senior VP of marketing and their product VP and a couple of other people over the course of those 3 hours and walked away from that thinking they're going to make me an offer. I just know it. And within about a week, I had an offer on the table to go work for them, basically doing exactly what I told them I wanted to do, which in 2022 and 2023 language or so, we'd call a product evangelist. Back in 2015, 2016, nobody used that terminology except maybe Salesforce. But that was effectively what my role was. That job title officially was advocacy manager.
Hype man.
which is, yeah, really, that's a good way to put it too. So I started just about, yeah. I started going to a lot of events representing the company, kind of like you did with Titan, or as you mentioned, being at the booth. I'd be out there wearing the company logo, talking about the company as much as I can at events, trying to get to user group meetings and representing the company. Sometimes in a stealth kind of mode where I wasn't presenting, but I just had the logo on and people would ask me what the company's all about and those kinds of things. And it was a blast. I learned that. It was fun. There's some new challenges that I hadn't really experienced before, like events. The company was going to be hosting their own customer conference, and they put me in charge of a track of sessions at the event. And I had never done much of that before. I think I had one Midwest Dreamin or two prior to that point. And with Midwest, my focus had primarily been get the conference organized, create the venue and get the space for it, handle all those kind of logistical things. And then my major function has always been sell the sponsorships to the partners. So the day-to-day hands-on, we need sessions, we need people to speak. I never really did a whole lot of that at Midwest. I always had people doing that for me. But that's what this company wanted me to do was fill a track of sessions with great speakers who were going to bring content to this conference that would not only excite their customers, but get people interested in coming who may not even be customers. So I was trying to find speakers, find content, find topics that were at least related in some degree to the product this company had, which was a Salesforce partner, of course. So it was a product on Salesforce that helped enable people to do things better, smarter, faster than just pure Salesforce. Like most of the partners out there, that's kind of what their product does. Let's focus on one specific thing and help you do it better. And so I helped them create this track of sessions at their conference, did that for 2 years at this organization. So I kind of learned a lot about events by helping them run an event. That helped from that perspective. They had a really, really strong event. They had a couple thousand people at that event both for 2 years. I was helping with it at that organization. So it was interesting. And then through that and through just kind of the general growth of Midwest Dreamin, I discovered I kind of like running events. It's kind of fun. But early on, that very first year I did Midwest, I was like, okay, I created this event. I got it to work, but I didn't enjoy it. I was literally too busy running the event, making sure everybody was where they were supposed to and everything was working to actually sit down in the session and enjoy the content. That's shifted a little over the years. I still probably don't spend a whole lot of time in content at Midwest or even some of the other events that I go to because I'm too busy making sure everybody's happy, that the event's fun and that the partners feel like they're getting value, that the attendees know where they're supposed to go, all that kind of stuff. And I think it all goes back to that little gentle push that my boss gave me with that first ecosystem job where she said, go find people. As silly as this may sound, and I know a lot of people who are going to laugh at this, prior to that kind of experience, I always considered myself an introvert. I would rather just be kind of hiding in the corner watching things happen than being out there talking to people and making things happen. And something about this ecosystem just kind of cracked the shell on that egg and my guts all spilled out, and I became this scrambled mess of an egg and an extrovert now, and it's just been a pretty wild and amazing ride.
It sounds like it, and what I think is cool is that kind of your initial position with Salesforce or in the Salesforce ecosystem led to you looking for information, which led to you creating an event, which led to you basically end up going to other events, becoming an events man, and an event evangelist, as we call it now, or as I called it before, the hype man. And now, you're in a bunch of different places doing different events, providing different, I think really important outlets for people within this space. And, I guess, what keeps you in this at this point? What's allowing you to say, hey, this is something I want to continue to devote my resources to and devote my energy to? Because I know someone who's run some local events, not for Salesforce, different types of parties, get-togethers, different types of events. It's exhausting. I mean, it's a thrill.
Yeah.
It's exhausting. Yeah. But when you get through it, there is that sense of accomplishment, which is amazing. The question is always, okay, so I feel accomplished. Why do I feel accomplished? Is it because of, I feel great about myself, or is it because really what did the people get out of it, the participants? And what do you think in 2024, what are people getting out of Salesforce events?
Yeah, that is a really great question. And the whole why do I keep doing it year over year? That's the thought process that's gone through my mind often. And I get a lot of people asking me the same questions or similar questions, and especially people who are interested in launching a community conference in their area. Been involved in a lot of those from the initial conversations on what's it take to do it, why do you do it, kind of thing. And that question comes up a lot. So everybody realizes it's a ton of work. How do you balance that work on the conference with your professional work life, with your family, with all that other stuff that you need to be doing? And I half jokingly say, well, I give up sleep to accomplish some of that. But over the years, I've got a great support system in my wife and kids. They've experienced the Dreamin' events with me. They've watched it grow. They've come to Chicago many years to play tourist and enjoy Chicago while Midwest Dreamin' was in Chicago. When we moved Midwest Dreamin' to Minneapolis, my wife was kind of mad at me. She's like, "That's 12 hours away. Chicago's only 6. Since we're not going to go, we can't do it. It's too far away." Still trying to convince them to come to Minneapolis for the events, just so they can enjoy Minneapolis, because there's a lot to do.
I'm sure.
Enjoy, but the pain and anguish that you kind of go through while you're doing the event, while you're worried about events, are attendees going to show up? Are you going to get enough sponsor dollars to pay for the event? It's one of those rides. It's very hilly. There's a lot of ups and downs throughout the whole process. But for me personally, the what's in it for me is that random happenstance where I'm at some event, whether it's Midwest or some other one, where somebody just walks up to me in the crowd and says, "Hey, I recognize you. You're Eric. You're the guy who started Midwest Dreamin', aren't you?" And I have a crazy sense of humor. So normally I say something like, "If you enjoyed it, then yes, I'm him. If you didn't, I don't know what you're talking about." Normally that's followed with something like, "Well, I attended in 2015 and I learned about this," whatever that topic was. And it changed the whole trajectory of my career. It changed the path that I went down and caused me to learn a whole bunch more things and improve my career and lead my family and all this kind of stuff. And one of those heartfelt, warm thank yous kind of thing, that's all I need to do it over and over every single year.
Amazing.
That's it. I mean, I get nothing out of it personally. I don't get any financial gain. We're all volunteers. All the money that we raise goes into the event. If there's any money left, we'll either donate to charity or we'll roll it over to next year's event. So I don't get a paycheck out of all of those efforts. But I do it because it feels right, because it helps other people. It kind of, if I go back to my very beginning in the ecosystem, I kind of feel like it's me paying the community back for my start. Because I feel like I gained so much of what I've been doing over the years because of the community. And that's it. Pretty simple in reality.
It's beautiful. Yeah, it's a beautiful story. It's a beautiful message. And I think there's something, as you're speaking about it, kind of thinking about, I guess, just the way that the energy is in the Salesforce ecosystem, where because so many people, happened upon Salesforce, and then it drove their, professional career, then, everyone wants to give back. And once they're giving back and creating these spaces for other people to benefit, people really do experience those benefits. People really do improve their lives and improve, their careers, because that's the energy, right? Everyone has that level of gratitude. And, I don't think it's, 100% happenstance, right? I think there is a lot of intention behind it and the way that Salesforce has set itself up as a company, but it's definitely unusual to a certain extent of how not only these things happen to them so often, but then how they stick with it and they end up giving back more, which I think is really the cool thing about this particular ecosystem.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of guided my whole journey ever since I got to that point. Practically every single role that I've had on the professional side of my journey has come not necessarily because of a job that I saw advertised somewhere, but more because of the connections that I've made and the people I know. And it's kind of circled around all of that. And the fact that I've done all of this, one of the things I discovered, probably 2015, 2016 time period, was that I was building this personal brand and this thing people knew me for. And once I kind of came to the realization that I had this brand, if you will, then I started doing things intentional to help grow the brand and to help make sure everybody knew what I was all about. And I think that's huge too in this ecosystem. If you can find your own little niche, and take advantage of that, if you will, market yourself appropriately, create a strong reputation for yourself that people are going to understand who you are and what you stand for and what you do, and just make sure you're doing it genuinely. I think that helps a lot, and the career growth, as you alluded to. Over the years I've been in this ecosystem, I've seen my salary triple, which is pretty amazing if I go back and think about it, from where I started and where I am today. And even the current iteration of my career journey where I am now, which is being an independent consultant, came about from the same basic stuff, where all those other roles came from the transition from another company to being independent. It was an interesting journey that wasn't totally planned, but it happened, and it came around in a pretty good way, and it has helped me learn some new things as a Salesforce talent, if you will, and helped me kind of grow my own community and my own circle of contacts some more. And I need to credit my wife for that one as well. After I left the previous company that I was at, I've been back home after that job for about a month, not really doing anything, just trying to figure out what my next move was going to be, what I wanted to do. And she said to me, "Why don't you not look for a job?" And my mind, I'm 62 years old. My mind said, "You want me to retire?" I'm not really ready for that. I said, I don't feel like I'm ready to slow down and then call it quits and not do a whole lot. And I said, something along the lines of, and we don't have 30 years worth of cash in the bank at this point in time, and I still fully expect to be around when I'm 90. And my wife said, no. She says, "I don't mean retire." She's like, "Just stay independent and do what you want to do." She says, "You've earned that. You deserve it." And I thought, oh, okay. I've always kind of toyed with the idea of going independent, but I've always kind of been scared by it. Where's the paycheck going to come from? How do you get steady income? How do you buy insurance as an independent? What do you do when a job's done? How do you find your next one? The thought of being out there constantly selling myself to keep the pipeline full and keep work out there was always kind of daunting to me. But when my wife suggested just stay independent and do what you want, right, my mind said, well, this is the perfect time to try it. I got a really good severance package for the company I was at previously. So that kind of enabled me, to take the time to try going independent and see what happened. So all I did was went out to LinkedIn, updated my profile and added a new job, kind of cloned the previous job description of the things I'm doing as an independent consultant and just sent it out into the world. 3 days later, I got an email from a company saying, "Hey, it looks like you're an independent consultant now. Are you open to some contract work?" I'm like, absolutely. That company became my first client.
Wow.
About 2 weeks later, they signed a 3-month agreement with me to do some things. In the third month of that agreement, they re-signed for another 6. In that 3 to 6 to 9 month time period, I picked up a few more clients along the way, and it's been like that ever since. I haven't really sold myself, if you will. I haven't gone out there and sent out email blasts saying, "Hey, I'm looking for work. What do you got for me?" I'm just out there doing my thing and letting them come to me. And for the most part, it's been pretty good. Been able to do some work for some companies I didn't know about previously and learned a few more things about the ecosystem and some more products in it. Still trying to stay very heavily focused on the ISV side of the market because that's where I spent the last 8 years with doing marketing and product evangelism kind of work for ISV partners. So that's still what I'm trying to focus on because I feel like I know that best.
It's a beautiful story. I've really enjoyed it. And I think there's a lot to learn in terms of, putting that energy that you get from, whatever is around you back into the people and the surroundings that you're in. And being able to see a lot of really amazing opportunity from it. And I love that last piece about not broadcasting to the world and seeing who's going to notice. It's what I would call a very bold move. But, I think clearly the work that you've done, in promoting good content and spaces for people furthering themselves in the ecosystem has really paid off. Yeah, I appreciate people like you and everything that you've done over the last 15 years at this point. Looking forward to meeting in person sometime soon.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I appreciate the opportunity to come on here and chat with you.
Thanks, Eric. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Salesforce Radio. Don't forget to subscribe for more exciting discussions, expert tips, and exclusive interviews with industry leaders. Stay connected with Titan, plus the power of the planet's leading CRM. See you next time.